Following Brad Marchand acquiring Scott Laughton from the Philadelphia Flyers, more moves are coming, and new reports are starting to swirl. Rumors are swirling surrounding their next trade target. We're going to break that down, discuss what it means going forward. But before we get into it, we are on the road to 16,000 subscribers. Make sure to hit that subscribe button if you're a part of the percentage who aren't subscribed to the channel. About 71% of you who are watching this video right now aren't subscribed. Darius, we are now an hour and a little bit out from the trade deadline, and the Leafs are positioning themselves to make another move, and hopefully they'll be able to do so. Some reports are starting to fly, and you saw in the intro video there about Brad Marchand. We have a report on that front as well. But it seems like after the Scott Laughton trade, they, A, got a couple extra picks in the Scott Laughton trade that they can use to dangle around, but B, they are still in need of either a forward or also a defenseman, and it is very, very interesting. You see this here, 50% retention on Laughton, retained Cowan Minton, Ben Danford, still have their 2025 second and next year's first round pick. Just to keep in mind, an update on the trade from Scott Laughton. Frank Cervelli had it wrong, or Pierre LeBrun had it wrong. So it is 2027, the first round pick they're trading away in the Scott Laughton trade. So they keep their pick next year, which is actually huge because that allows them to get more. Teams prefer the closer pick when you're talking about value most of the time. The Leafs are still well positioned to make another move ahead of the deadline. Darius, seems like another move is on the horizon here. It's going to be crickets probably for a little bit until the deadline is basically upon us, which it almost is now after months of waiting. This is very interesting, and I believe that the Leafs are they're positioning themselves at least to make a big move here.
They're going to make another move here at the deadline. Probably around 3 o'clock, there's going to be another move made. And I'm thinking it would be fun if it was Brad Marchand. It would be fun. But I'm thinking it's probably going to be a defenseman, a depth defenseman, something like that. Or maybe something a little bit bigger, and they move some salary out. We've heard that Max Domi, Nick Robertson, a few other guys could be cap casualties. Obviously, Ryan Reeves was that yesterday after being placed on waivers. So could get very interesting as we head towards the deadline. We're also going to be live as the deadline passes. So, trades come in right after the deadline too. They kind of linger for a little bit. So I'm sure the Leafs are going to be included in some of that as well. So should be a lot of fun. I do wonder about, Connor Murphy too from the Chicago Blackhawks. Like there's a lot of depth defensemen kind of been thrown around out there the last little while. So I do wonder if they're still kicking tires on that. We've heard that Ryan Donato's not available anymore from the Chicago Blackhawks. So, but it doesn't matter. The Leafs have their center, their third line center. They made their decision. It is Scott Laughton. It's a great deal. And to pivot back to what you were saying just a second ago about the 2027 first round pick, it's a good move. Similar to the McCabe trade, when they made it, they skip over the next year and they give them the 2025 first round pick, right? So I do like the trade. I do like that they held on to their first round pick for next year, and it's only a first round pick in 2 years from now. Some good business from Brad Marchand, and I think that he's probably going to make another move here pretty soon.
Yeah, I mean, in theory, the Leafs are positioning themselves. If they really want to go out there, they could make a push for Rasmus Ristolainen. We know the price is absolutely through the roof, but they kept enough of their assets to where if they really wanted to do that and go all in, then that's available. Of course, there's some other, I think they're going to want to land a right-handed shot defenseman. Connor Murphy, you mentioned. Mario Ferraro of the Sharks is another guy, albeit he's a left-handed shot defenseman. So there's a lot of different names here, but another name that's been throwing out in the forward group is Brad Marchand. And this morning, Kevin Weeks said no team needs Brad Marchand more than the Maple Leafs. He's a winner, and they could use his big-time playoff experience. That was just an hour ago. Sorry, it feels like this morning. About an hour ago. Brad Marchand, if they can go out and get him, then that would obviously change everything for the Leafs. However, the price would be astronomical, and I've been seeing some rumblings on Twitter and rumblings in general. Like the price would probably have to be like Cowan Minton, a first and a second, something like that to get Brad Marchand in this market. Is that worth it? I don't really know yet at this point, but what I do know at the very least is that this team has the opportunity. I mean, teams are getting better across the league. Dallas Stars just got Mikko Rantanen. That deal's done. You have with an extension in place. That crosses him off of the board, available in free agency, which I'll have a video on as well. I'll change everything, all that stuff. Because that changes the outlook of the free agency now and sets Mitch Marner's contract. But as it pertains to this specific move, I mean, Brad Marchand, you need to add some more firepower. I think Scott Laughton is a perfect move, but if you really want to push yourself, I wouldn't be opposed to kind of going all in at this juncture. That being said, they have plenty of assets to go all in again next trade deadline and during the offseason if they want to take that route.
The only thing with Brad Marchand is they would have to retain salary. You would need a third team to retain salary as well because he makes $6 or north of $6 million. So, or the Leafs would have to move a player out, which is definitely possible off the roster. They could definitely do that, but he would certainly help the team. Like imagine a second line of Brad Marchand, John Tavares, and William Nylander or something like that. That'd be a lot of fun, right? That'd be a lot of fun to watch in the playoffs. it's still up in the air. Chris Johnson came out and said that he's most likely, if he is traded, because it is still something that the Bruins are considering as we head towards the deadline, that they may not actually trade him and just keep him, re-sign him. He may head to a Western Conference team. So that was the latest report, but it's still up in the air. And if the Leafs decide to kick tires on it last minute, I'm sure that they'll have a conversation about it. But again, if it's Easton Cowan, Fraser Min, first round pick, something like that for Brad Marchand, a UFA Brad Marchand in his mid 30s, probably not. Probably not going to do that, but it would be a fun idea if they were to do that. But I still think there's a lot up in the air. I think it's probably a depth move. I say a depth move, but I think it's going to be a pretty significant move in some type of fashion. Like it's going to be a defenseman that can probably slot in right away. So it's going to be very interesting to see what Brad Living has up his sleeve because he got very crafty this morning. I have to give him credit.
Yeah.
This was pretty creative, and I think he came away the winner in this one.
Yeah, good deal. As it pertains to the cap space, again, currently is 876. Again, having Scott Laughton retained at 1.5 helps for future moves, helps with everything. And of course, they waived Ryan Reeves yesterday, so that'll help negate 1.15 million, assuming he doesn't get picked up on waivers, which I mean, maybe he will, depending on what happens there. But yeah, Brad Marchand, it is probably a shot in the dark. That being said, we're about an hour away now. I'm not going to put anything behind Brad Treliving here. Considering the pieces we've seen, this is absolutely a win for the Leafs, and Treliving from JD Bunkus leaves a lot of flexibility to do more. They have to do more now. It's pretty quiet. It usually is an hour before or hour or so before the trade deadline. But there are a lot of players available. And also breaking news as I'm recording, I just refreshed Twitter. Luke Kunin just got traded to the Blue Jackets, so he will not be joining the Leafs, so we can all rejoice on that. He will not be, Luke Kunin will not be joining the Toronto Maple Leafs, which he would have been a fine ad, but I'm hoping they're looking for more. And defense-wise, I mean, there's a lot of players available that they can get for hopefully relatively cheap. And again, you look at the lineup now, I mean, whether or not you can rotate Max Domi and Bobby McMahon, I think even Pontus Holmberg on the fourth line, I like. There is a chance that Steven Lorentz gets phased out a little bit here, depending on the matchup. You have Nyes, Matthews, Marner, Domi, Tavares, Nylander. Putting Scott Laughton there on the defensive group, you need to get one more guy. I'm fine with Connor Murphy. I would be over the moon with Rasmus Ristolainen if the price isn't absolutely absurd. And let's not forget, they were saying the price for Scott Laughton was absolutely absurd. And it ultimately ended up, like, given the market, not even that absurd. And honestly, even if the market wasn't as crazy as it is this year, like I think this is a trade that probably would have been, even in last year's trade deadline, like a little bit of an overpay, but still a fine deal, especially given the retained salary and they kept all of their valuable assets aside from their 2027 pick. And we didn't even think they were going to be trading that pick because of, I mean, most teams value the more recent pick more. So it's interesting.
Yeah, we were thinking it was going to be a 2026, but it's very interesting in that way. And I think, like you mentioned, like I think it's going to be a depth defenseman at this point. That's kind of everything we've heard to this point was like they were leaning towards a depth defenseman that they were going to add. So I think that's probably where they're leaning right now. But this team, I think, just got a lot better with Scott Laughton. You add one more defenseman, it's pretty formidable. I know injuries happen, but they're looking pretty good. It's going to fall on the shoulders of the core four. We keep saying it at the end of the day in the playoffs. That's exactly what's going to happen. But these moves do make this team better. I'm excited to see if Brad Living does something more. And like you said, Luke Kunin getting traded, I mean, he doesn't, push the needle for me. He doesn't move the needle for me. So I'm glad that they got Scott Laughton. I think it's a good return. If you looked at last year, maybe you're looking at this trade and you're like, whoa, first round pick for Scott Laughton. That's a little crazy. But the market this year, I mean, Yanni Gord and Bjorkstrand went for 2 first round picks, right? So the market is a little bit crazy this year, and I think they made out just fine.
Yeah, and last year, first round picks, they were traded across the board. I mean, the Jets got Sean Monahan for a first round pick, which ultimately you'd probably rather Sean Monahan than a guy like Scott Laughton, but given what the Leafs need, they did all right. They did very good, actually. They robbed the Flyers. But either way, let us know down below what your thoughts are. Market's getting crazy. We'll be live very shortly as well, so make sure to stay tuned for that, and let us know if you think they'll make a move. Cheers.